Hi there, and welcome to the Performance Culture Masterclass. I'm delighted you've responded to either an email or a LinkedIn, and you are here. Um, Basically, you're going to be spending the next 30 to 40 minutes with me, and my goal really is to help educate and to really help you get a really clear picture of, first of all, what a performance culture looks like, but also, much more importantly, it's the how. How are you going to get there? Now, look, I don't know whether you are a managing director, an owner of a business, a shareholder, a director, potentially even an HR director or head of HR. But whoever you are, I sincerely hope that you find this whole process and this whole masterclass valuable. So without further ado, let's just kick straight in and let me take you through the education process. So first of all, you probably want to know a little bit about me. My name is Mike Turner. I'm the CEO of a business called You Become, and we're an award-winning culture and engagement experts. And basically, we've been working with ambitious and what we describe as growth-focused companies for the last 15 years. Now, it's really all about this whole process, this whole masterclass is about understanding the power of a performance culture. You have a culture in your business, whether you like it or not, and you know that. The question is it underpinning tremendous performance, or is it not? Or is it somewhere in between? And the vast majority of companies, dare I say it, are somewhere in between. And this is directly focused. I am speaking, as I hope, to an owner of a company, a director of a company, and or any of the senior managers within the business who properly want to understand their people and culture assets and make their people, as I describe, the solution and not the problem. And like I say, I hope that you'll realize over the next 30 to 4 minutes that I've kind of been there and seen it all. I've seen companies of all shapes and sizes. We've worked with companies from as small as 15 or 20 staff all the way up to over 2,000 staff, and sometimes in one case even more. So it's, at the end of the day, we've worked with all sorts of different shapes and sizes of organizations, but fundamentally culture is similar in wherever you go. So what will we be covering today? We're going to be looking at what a performance culture looks like and why you want this in your company or business. We're also going to look at how to measure culture and why effective people metrics are so critical for the success of your business. We're also going to be looking at how does a performance culture affect your customers. And also, probably just as importantly as anything else, is the practical steps to creating and measuring your performance culture. So I'm pretty sure you're here and you're listening to this now because you've decided you want to demonstrate that your people are part of the solution and not the problem. Now, ultimately, the question I posed right at the start, whether it be through email, LinkedIn, or whatever, which is, do you truly value and understand the value of your culture within your organization? What pound value would you put to that, or dollar value would you put to that? And ultimately, that's really the crux of it. Sooner or later, a business is likely to get bought if it's a young and developing business. If it's a mature business, it may well be bought. You never know. But ultimately, the value of the organization isn't just in its products, as we know, it's in its people. And so, really, I think you're here because you want to try to understand what that value is, and if as an asset to your business. So here's what you need to know. This people and culture stuff needs to be simplified. It could be quite complex if you really want it to be, or it could be quite simple if you want it to be. And so I'm going to encourage you to go for the latter, go for the more simple approach. But I'm not saying necessarily that what I'm going to talk to you over the next 30 to 40 minutes is easy to do. It's not easy to do, but the concept's simple. The delivery and execution will require, obviously, it will require work. But ultimately, we need the process to be simple. So let's get right down to it. Because when it comes to culture, for me, the only thing that really matters is that your team, and when that team could mean your entire company or the immediate team that you work with, are committed, motivated, and empowered to take action without being nannied. Ultimately, every leader in a business, whether it's a CEO or just a team leader, that's ultimately what you want from your immediate team, particularly, is ultimately you want people to trust the people that work for you, to be able to go and deliver to an outstanding level. The goal is high productivity and high performance too. So what you need, therefore, is a simple framework that measures, first of all, the people assets effectively. And what I mean by that is from all the way through things like engagement, through to skills and capability, through all aspects of people and the people within your business. And the challenge I sort of put to you is the fact that if I were to come to your business and you were to sit me down, you'd probably be able to explain to me, certainly, your balance sheet, your assets within your business, the P&L, what the business is looking like right now. Are you hitting or are you not hitting targets, etc.? So from a numbers perspective, particularly financial numbers perspective, you would be able to explain to me pretty much where your business was. However, the challenge, though, is you probably wouldn't be able to have that same handle on your people assets. And if you've ever said or uttered these words, that people are our most important asset, then you need to understand what that asset looks like. And that's part of what we're going to be looking at there. We need numbers, we need metrics. And that's really a key part of what we're going to be looking at. And for me, it's time to get this thing nailed down. And then once this approach or this philosophy is embedded within your business, you're sorted. You're sorted it or something which should continue and continue and continue. But we need to get this thing sorted if you don't already have it done. So from this moment forward, there are no other strategies. You don't need to have any other strategies. This is really the only one that you need to know. The one that delivers an engaged and motivated workforce and creates a high degree of accountability amongst your leadership group. Nirvana. And key thing is it's measurable. I've got measurable here for some reason, and it's also demonstratable, so you can actually demonstrate that to others. So if you ever are in a situation where you need to, you're thinking of a merger, an acquisition, or being purchased, you have something tangible that you can show. So I hope what I'm just about to explain to you is simple. We have an acronym that you will explain later, which actually has the acronym symbol, is the acronym SIMPLE, and it goes through a process and a methodology that you can adopt within your business that will get you to what you want to get to, which is a easily demonstratable understanding of your people asset. So what we're going to do is we're going to gain a much better and greater understanding of what your culture looks like. And like I say, we're going to show you, or I'm going to show you, how to implement this in a simple way. But it won't happen unless you make the decision almost immediately that you want to take positive action as a result of this masterclass. Now, the nice thing is that at the end of this masterclass, if you believe that you really want to get stuck in to properly, first of all, measure and then really develop and improve your performance culture, then you will have an option, if you want to book a 45-minute masterclass with me where I will take you for your specific business through a plan of action, which will lead you to key actions that you need to take specific to your business. And it's all for me about helping you take positive action. It's important to educate yourself, but if you learn something and you think that it applies to your business, then it's important to take action. And I want to really encourage you to do that and think about the action that you're going to be taking at the end of this. So what do the best companies and teams look and feel like? I'm sure you've got in your mind, think back through all the best companies you've worked for, all the best teams you've been on, and you will have in your mind a picture of what that might look and feel like. What are the pieces of that jigsaw? What are the things that make truly great teams and great companies? What does that culture look like? Well, let me explain that we've used a lot of research to find the answers to that question. And we've used lots of global studies. So, for example, global studies done by McKinsey, by Gallup, and by Bain all provided us with tremendous amounts of rich data on what the very best organizations, the highest performing businesses do. We've also worked with King's College London, to help us put together a way in which we can measure that and help companies to measure that and benchmark themselves against what great looks like versus others. But ultimately, we need to focus on the right things. And that's what the research that we've done has helped us to do, or can help you to do. And let's just look at what those right things are. So we call them the 6 pillars of what a strong culture looks like. And through the research that we've done over 3 or 4 years, this is what those global studies come back with. The number one thing that a good, strong, powerful culture will have is that employees feel trusted and empowered to do the job that they need to do. Secondly, that there is a really strong leadership group within the business that has a clear vision and a mission of where they want to go, but also highly approachable. They're not in ivory towers. They can be approached. Anyone in the business can approach them and ask them questions, and they'll get the right answers back. The third element is we call customer obsession, or an external focus. So the very best businesses are focused heavily on what their customers want, on delighting their customers and making their customer experience outstanding. Fourthly is a really strong learning culture, a personal and professional development culture, where every individual, from the CEO down to the board of directors, down to the senior management team, down to the middle management team, down to just junior employees, everyone has that mindset of personal and professional development. Fifthly is a business that has brilliant communication, from top down, from bottom up. So there's a place where people can go to communicate upwards, but also side to side, which we mean by department to department. And finally, what I call the magic dust of an organization, which is the growth attitude within the business. Which is, again, similar to the personal and professional development, which is, right at the top, all the way through the business, is what are we doing in the next 6 months, which could get us better, make us better than we were in the last 6 months. It's that sort of growth attitude, which really all the strong businesses, all the businesses which have high performing cultures, they will all demonstrate that. So let me just give you some anecdotal evidence. Now, for me, you're almost certainly doing some of those things well. The million-dollar question is, are you doing it all well? And this gives you an example. I'm just going to throw some examples at you of businesses that are doing this better than most. And this is done through Glassdoor. If you're not familiar with Glassdoor gives employees, both current and past employees, the ability to give you reviews, an organization, a review of what it's like to work there. And so we looked at what are the best businesses, certainly related to culture and development. What were the best scoring businesses? And these are some of the responses. And these are some of the things that employees said about working, in this case, for CloudReach. So the leadership team really cares about the people. A dedicated learning and development team to promote career development. So that's CloudReach. Skyscanner supports and encourages constant personal development and learning, a trusting work environment. Lookers, managers are easy to approach and have a good laugh with staff. Andy Bruce, the CEO, makes you feel like a person and not a number. If you're a CEO watching this, what do you think your people are going to say to you? Would they be saying the same things to you, about you, as Andy Bruce? Screwfix, a great family feel culture. And let's face it, Screwfix are a very large organization, multi-thousand person organization, and yet they've managed to create a sort of a family feel culture and a forward-thinking company with a very clear direction. So a quick summary is what makes a great culture? Well, it's those six pillars. It's trust and empowerment, an outstanding leadership team, customer obsession, a real focus on personal and professional development, brilliant communication, and a growth attitude, an improvement attitude. So those are the things that need to be embedded in your business, and for you to put your hand on your heart and say, we have a powerful and a high performance culture. But for me, the great things for me. And is this going to happen in your business? Well, what gives me confidence is the fact that you're here. Now, if you're here, you by default, you are one of what I would describe as probably the top 20% of CEOs and directors of companies, because you're actually wanting to understand a little bit more about this and what you could do to improve your business. You're already in that improvement mindset. And so you're clearly forward thinking. You're thinking, okay, what can I do better within my organization? And for me, if you've got those two pieces of the jigsaw, we're in good shape. So well done. I'm going to give you a good thumbs up for that. And you almost certainly, and because you're interested in this, the chances are you're almost certainly doing a number of these things well. But equally, you're probably being honest with yourself and thinking and reflecting on the fact that you may well be doing some of these things not so well. And really, my goal for you and my wish for you is that you can get the whole jigsaw puzzle. Get the whole jigsaw puzzle in place. So you're going from being a good business to an outstanding and excellent business. So I think what better way to transition to the actual nuts and bolts of what you need to do than, let's just think for a minute of some brilliant, high-performing teams that we can relate to. And one which I always think is a brilliant one for us to think about is good old British cycling. I'm sure you know, even if you're not a particular sports fan, you'll know how many gold medals British cycling has won in the last four Olympics, particularly the last three, which was Beijing, London, and Rio. In those three we won pretty much clean swept the gold medals, and it was all driven by an incredible culture which was which was originally set up by a guy called David Brailsford, who now runs Team Sky and which is now Team Ineos. But anyway, I was lucky enough to go to a presentation by Dave Brailsford, where he explained some of the things that he engendered within what was then Team Sky, and which I'm sure he's now doing still with Team Ineos, and why these guys perform so well and get such incredible results. And so let's look at that for a minute. So what makes a championship team? Commitment to the right vision and values, collecting the right data, planning the right actions and tasks, embedding the right behaviors, which then grows the right culture. So let's look at those in a little bit more detail. A champion mindset must commit to the right vision and values. So you may well have this. Again, you're here on this call because culture interests you, and therefore I'd be surprised if you don't have real clarity around your vision and values. It's essential. Brailsford talks about the fact that right at the start of every Olympic cycle, him and his team will sit down and they'll really, really iron out exactly what the vision for the group is, but particularly what the values are. What are important to us as a team, and so what can we hold everyone accountable to as a group. So if you don't have those things, I'm going to really strongly suggest get stuck in and really get to work on that. The next thing, which is all about collecting the right data, and we'll come on to this in a bit more detail in terms of the things I'm going to encourage you to do. But data is key. It goes back to the question I talked about evaluating and putting some form of value on your people asset. Well, unless you are collecting data, you're pie in the sky. If I was to come to you and say, what's your culture like? You might well tell me, oh, it's brilliant, fantastic. But what data can you give me to back that up? And that's what we're talking about. Brailsford was obsessive about the data that he needed to collect on all his champion cyclists. And I'm sure if you haven't heard of the concept of marginal gains, Brailsford was the person to bring that up, which was measuring over 100 different aspects of an athlete, and then thinking about what tiny little things could they do to improve even just one of those different things to improve performance. And it was if you improved a number of those tiny little things, performance would exponentially grow. So you must collect the right data, and I can help you and explain to you the data that you need to collect. Naturally, once you have the data, you kind of need to take the right action. And so the assumption obviously has to be that with the right accurate data, then you can assess what that's telling you. Is it what is it? Are we strong? Are we weak? And if so, what are the priorities in terms of our actions, and what's the plan? And so it's a natural progression from once you've collected really powerful and effective data, is then putting a really outstanding plan together. And then ultimately, it's about changing and creating new habits and behaviors. What we kind of all know is that we all of us have good habits. We also have some bad habits. And ultimately, the way in which we improve performance is by replacing bad habits with good ones, by changing our behaviors and changing our people's behaviors. There's a great book called "It's All About Behavior, Stupid," and it's a great book because it focuses on how do we help change our people's behavior, and ultimately what this process will and what championships teams do is focus on that. If they want to improve performance, they have to change behavior. And ultimately, by changing behavior, by changing mindset, by changing habits, etc., fantastically, what will happen is the right culture develops because everyone's on that journey. And so, like I say, the results of British cycling have been incredible over the last 15 odd years, and it's been because there's such an embedded culture of performance within that organization. And while not every business is as high performing as British cycling, if you can just get a little bit of that within your organization, and you are far, far better off than the vast majority of businesses in the UK. So, how could this look in your business? Well, as I describe, it's simple. And simple is an acronym of the process or the suggested framework that I would give you, or our business would give you, in order for you to develop some of the things that we've just talked about in terms of a performance culture. So what I'm going to explain to you very quickly is I'm going to take you through the S, the I, the M, the P, the L, and the E. Each of those things stands for something different, and it gives you some specific things to do, which will give you that performance culture, or give you the plan and the framework and the process to get you there. So let's start. So what is S? S stands for surveys and assessments. And ultimately, surveys and assessments are excellent, again, at that initial stage of collecting the right data and assessing where you are. So, ultimately, Brailsford would tell you that data is power. Without data, you're blind. And so, ultimately, I always use the example, let's just imagine for 1 minute that you are selling your business and that you need to, and the prospective purchaser is coming into you and looking and asking for you for different things. And then they're asking to you about the quality of your people and the strength of your culture. Now, my guess is that you would probably tell them, we're fantastic, we're brilliant, we've got great people. Most proud managing directors would say the same thing. But what would happen if they then say, well, show it to me. What data can you give me that can show that? Very few people are able to then provide them with what I would describe as a people balance sheet, which effectively shows the assets within the organization, the liabilities, and some sort of science behind that. And that's what I want for you, is a people balance sheet, a really thorough, well thought through framework and document, if you will, which gives you a really clear assessment of the strengths and naturally the weaknesses of your organization. You can't improve what you don't measure. And so it's going to be essential to measure some really key things at different levels within your organization to get the right people balance sheet. What might they be? Well, first of all, we've got to think of the macro and the micro data. And you can apply and get this information through surveys and through other different methods. But what is it that I mean by macro and micro? Well, basically, when it comes to surveys and assessments, the different sort of surveys that you can do are either on what I describe as a macro level, or a micro level. A macro is company-based, a company-wide data survey. So you're probably very familiar with something like an employee engagement survey. Well, that's one of the surveys that you could run. We like to focus on those 6 pillars and really focus not just on engagement, but cultural strength and various different things. But whatever it is that you decide to implement, and we can certainly give you some suggestions on that if that's what you want. Basically, you need to collect data from a company-wide perspective, and some of those key elements are the fact that if you're going to do that, there must be some level of trust and security in the process. We strongly recommend, if you can afford to, use a third party, use an external third party to do these types of measurements. There's a lot more trust in the process if you can do that, and your employees can then feel much more able to be honest with their responses. We really also strongly recommend a good rhythm. At a macro company-wide level, we suggest a decent annual survey, and then we also recommend some what we would call pulse surveys 2 or 3 times during the year, which are not nearly as long, but they're just picking up some key measurements and metrics, which again give you a sense of where your organization is. There must be, off the back of any survey or assessment, some clear and directed action, and well communicated as well. So to make sure that not just initially, but consistently throughout the annual process or year, you will definitely be able to do that. So basically, that's the data collection piece, and whether that's done on a macro or a micro level. Macro being company-wide, micro would be collecting that information on an individual or a team. So we would also strongly suggest and recommend that you would be collecting information not just on your. So I'm just going to go back to this slide here. Not just on your company as a whole, but also on your individuals too. So we would again suggest either whether it's done in a 180 format, which is effectively a manager giving an assessment and an individual doing a self-assessment, all the way through to a 360 analysis of particularly usually leaders within the business. But ultimately, you're collecting data at both macro and micro level, which is all feeding into your people balance sheet, giving you some sense of strength within your organization related to your people. The next step, so that's S. And then so the next part of the process, which is about simple, is to get what we call qualitative data. We've talked about quantitative data with your surveys and assessments. Now we're talking about basically whether it be on an individual basis or within a team situation, we need to get qualitative data too. And what does that mean? It really effectively means that surveys give us a really rich amount of information, but often they pose questions that we need answers to. And so this is really what we're talking about. We're looking about feedback and or focus groups to get the rest, the fill in all the blanks, which you may not have from, or you may have, I beg your pardon, from the survey. So we're looking at well-structured and safe focus groups. Ideally, again, in the perfect world, you'd have someone external doing this because there's just simply more trust. And that trust basically provides people the ability to be really open and honest about what they want to say. And really the whole idea is that qualitative information and examples will back up the numbers that you're getting in your surveys, and also be given anecdotal information from different parts of your business. The M part of simple is the other side of the coin, which is effectively getting feedback from your customers. We call it market feedback, but how are they affected? For me, this is where the rubber hits the road, because ultimately it's our customers that effectively pay our mortgages. And how do we connect the people agenda with the commercial side of the business? This is where the two interconnect. And so it's really important that we get feedback from our customers as well, which then can give another perspective on how our people are performing. The fourth part, which is the P, which is a really, really critical piece. And our research well, we run hundreds of surveys, and from that information, one of the number one factors that really people hate generally within their business is either the annual appraisal or review process. It's usually the worst scoring element of any organization, and it's because it's so outdated. It's once a year. People hate doing it because it's basically I'm having to try to demonstrate that I should get a pay rise. The manager has to do lots of preparation. It's just generally it's an outmoded and outdated process. Basically, we are really encouraging all our clients just to completely rip up what they're doing, what they've done in the past, and to focus on a much more flexible and iterative process. And ultimately, this is that we call that process the personal development and engagement framework, the PDE framework, and it's all about very regular, less formal conversation between a manager and their team members, I should say. But it's really just focusing on really high quality conversations which look at the welfare of the person, the performance, and also the development of that individual. Change is needed in this area. We definitely know this. So many people complain about the annual review process. And my guess is that if you're like 90% of organizations in the UK, you may well fall into that category too. So for me, it's focusing on high quality, as I say, high quality one-to-one conversations, creating a consistent framework across your leadership group. So any employee who is getting a one-to-one is getting a similar quality of one-to-one. Empowering the manager and employee, providing data, like say through a 180-degree based feedback conversation, making sure that the employee drives the summaries, making sure there's a regular rhythm. We strongly suggest a monthly rhythm. It can go out to bi-monthly, but not much more, but not any more than that. And ultimately, if you're doing this well, it's amazing how the employee survey data and then the data that you're collecting from 180s can all feed into this people balance sheet, which I talk about, which effectively will give you a real clarity of where you're at. And that's what we call the board, providing the board with a dashboard about the health and the strength of your culture and your people within your business. And lastly, ultimately, it sounds quite ruthless, but the role of a manager is so important within the life of any employee that we must identify those that are really struggling. And if they continue to struggle and not improve, then we have to move them into another role, because poor management is generally the root cause of why people leave and why we sometimes lose good talent. It's because we have sometimes some poor managers within our organization. So the L part of simple is the next piece, as you would imagine. We've talked about management. It's such an important skill set, and therefore it's going to be essential that you have good training and consistency across that group. So interestingly, our experience is that even if you have good leadership competencies, they're rarely applied. People are rarely measured against that, and that's why it's so important to measure your leadership group. And we strongly suggest things like 360s for that process and that purpose. Ultimately, as I said before, it's essential that we drive consistency, that every manager can deliver a very similar quality of one-to-one conversation, and make sure that those behaviors that they demonstrate are values that you want your leadership group to demonstrate to. And the last part is really making sure that your education and learning culture supports your people, and the fact that identifying competencies, and like I say, our experience sadly is that even if competencies have been created, they're rarely applied and used effectively. That we need to be using them to measure. They need to be used to measure against effectively. And then once you've measured an individual against what good looks like, you then have the ability to then ascertain the training and development that they need and make sure that its pathway is there. It's important also that if you do decide to use a technological solution, that it is what I describe as light touch. The amount of solutions out there is almost mind-boggling, but a lot of them are just far too sort of what I call click heavy. In that, what we're talking about here is really good quality management, and ultimately, it's not about clicking and playing games on computers. It's about often a very good conversation. So it makes sure that the technology is not overburdensome, and what I describe as light touch. So remember, as a sort of a final we're wrapping up now, and the only thing that matters is that your team are committed, they're motivated, and are empowered to take action without too much oversight and what I call nannying. As you remember, that the goal is to have high productivity and performance. So are you committed to creating that culture? And my guess is that you are. If you're not, well, hopefully that you found some of those things useful in terms of the framework that you can apply through that simple framework all the way through to the 6 core pillars of culture. But if it's something that you want to create, like I say, my gut would tell me that you're doing some of those things well. It might be in other areas that you're not doing so well. You've probably already identified those things in your head. So if you are committed to making some changes, then the next thing is take action. Take action. And I've got a great option for you. Ultimately, what I am providing for you is a free 45-minute one-to-one strategy session with me, either after this masterclass or over the next sort of week or so. Or it's basically, my diary is available to you. You'll see in the buttons below this particular screen and on the website, you'll see the ability to book a session. I tend to be able to try to make myself available both on Mondays and Thursdays. And ultimately, what I'm prepared to give you is we can look at your business, we can talk about your business very specifically. We can identify the things that you believe from your understanding and experience, the things that you might need to do. And I can give you my expertise from working with all sorts of shapes and sizes of businesses over 15 years. I can share with you the things that I would recommend that you focus on as a business and as a leadership group. So, and I can give you some different solutions that you may or may not decide that you want to take up. But ultimately, it's 45 minutes of my time. You've got nothing to lose. Hopefully, you understand that there's some expertise here for you to take advantage of. And so, really, I'm also going to give you a little bonus if you make that leap. What I've developed as well with my colleagues is we've created something called the Performance Culture Scorecard, and ultimately it's something that you can take, which effectively enables you to do a self-assessment on the current strength of your culture, and it measures you against those 6 key pillars as I described earlier, and it gives you a 28-page report on where you're at right now, and second of all, the different things that you could do. So it gives you some sense of where you are and what you could do, all in a 28-page report. And ultimately, that we charge on our website for £49, and I'm prepared to give that to you for free if you commit to a 45-minute strategy session, mainly because if you do that, it will help yourself really focus your mind. It will also help me to get a much better understanding of where you are currently related to others. And I can share with you whether you're scoring well or not in comparison with other businesses that have taken this. So that's a free offer worth £49. My time I charge to my clients I won't even tell you what I charge to my clients. I charge quite a lot to my clients. So, and you're getting 45 minutes of my time for free. So a combination of this culture scorecard plus my time to really get you in the right frame of mind to take the next step and really develop your culture. So why would you want to do this? Well, because a performance culture and having a high performance culture in your business makes your goals and dreams for your business are much more likely to become a reality. You know in your heart of hearts that it's your people that are your biggest asset. They're the ones that will make or break you. They're the ones that will either deliver you your targets and your numbers or not. And therefore, isn't it much better that they are a high performing business? They are a high performing set of people. And if you buy into that, which I'm sure most of you do, then you know that good people with the right attitude make your job much less stressful. We know that. It makes your job much more rewarding. And what I would argue is, why the heck not? Why not really strive to make your business's performance and culture brilliant? Why not go for that? And so if you're thinking that, then let's go for it. So really, the final thing I'm going to say is, if all that sounds good, then just take positive action. Book your free strategy session with me. All the details are below. You can find a time in your diary which works. Book my diary out, 45 minutes, and I will take you through a process which at the end which hopefully you'll be compelled to take some good quality action. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you found that useful, and I look forward to speaking to you on the strategy call.